Today, I want to teach you about carb cycling. More specifically, I'm going to explain the science in an applicable way. See, all the research in the world is great, but if we cannot apply it into real life, or the research isn't actually applicable for lifestyle-oriented results, it's pointless. We need things that we can grab, use, and see results with immediately. Today, I'm going to cover carb cycling in a few different ways so you can see where and when it's actually applicable and it may actually give you results. There are 5 main things that we need to cover today when considering if carb cycling is good for you. But before we get into those 5 things, I just want to break down the context of what carb cycling actually is and a few ways that you can apply this into your macro periodization. Macro periodization being simply how you plan out your calories throughout the week. So the first, easiest, most simple, and most popular way is to have high carb days on your training days, low carb days on your rest or cardio days. This is really simple. If you train 3 days a week, you have 3 high carb days, 4 low carb days. If you train 4 days a week, you have 4 high carb days, 3 low carb days. 5 days a week, 2 days a week. Very easy to comprehend, and it makes sense in theory. When we train, we absorb more carbs, you have more carbs on those days. The other way you can approach this is almost like a scale. You build up to it. So you can have 2 different approaches for this: low, medium, high, or low, low, high. And the best way to start is a low, a medium, a high, and then you repeat. Your high days are going to be different days week to week, but essentially what you're doing is having a low carb day, a moderate carb day, and then a high carb day. As you plateau, you'll shift into a low, low, high. So now instead of having another moderate day, you're going to have 2 low carb days followed by a high carb day. And when you plateau from there, you simply add a low carb day into the mix. 3 low carb days followed by 1 high carb day. The theory here is simple. We're slowly depleting glycogen and then replenishing it on that 3rd or 4th day. This refuels your glycogen stores for training. It gives you a psychological boost, yada yada. It makes sense. And in practice, I've used this many times with bikini competitors getting ready for stage, and it works really well, and it's easy to digest. Now that you understand that carb cycling is really just a caloric undulation, it's just a way for us to bring calories up and down and vary it throughout the week, we're going to dive into the 5 things that actually matter when considering the application of carb cycling. The first thing you need to understand when going into any type of undulation or macro periodization: calories equated at the end of the week rules the rest. Studies have shown if calories are equated, if protein is equated with that, by the end of the week, it does not matter what you do with your calories. I don't care if you have 2 high days, 3 high days, 4 high days, 6 low days, it doesn't matter. If your calories equal the amount that your energy balance needs, meaning your caloric deficit or surplus is in the right place by Sunday to Sunday, you will see results the same way as somebody else who used a different undulation fashion. And they have studies to prove this. Group A may have had 4 high carb days, 3 low carb days. They did an undulation of high and lows across the week, and Group B just did linear. They had the same calories every single day. Each group showed the same results. What this means is that calories trump the rest. So as long as those are equated, you're going to see success. The second thing we need to remember: glycogen storage rates. There's a process, and it's a lengthy process for some individuals when we consume carbohydrates. We have to go through digestion, the breakdown of our bile. We have to absorb those carbohydrates. Our body then has to convert the glucose carbohydrates into glycogen and store that into our muscle cell so that when we go work out, we can train with it. That doesn't happen in 30 minutes. So if you have a bowl of oatmeal right before your workout, that's not necessarily going to act like that and turn into fuel right away. Some of it possibly, because sugars do convert quicker, so carbohydrates that are higher glycemic may have that effect. But the point here is simple. If I have a high carb day today, but I don't train tomorrow, am I really utilizing that? If I have a low carb day today and I'm training tomorrow, am I replenishing my glycogen stores or filling my glycogen stores enough for tomorrow's workout? Possibly not. Because for some individuals, it can take 4 hours, others it can take 36 hours. It all depends on your digestion, your nutrient partitioning, the way your body takes carbohydrates and calories and converts them into fuel or muscle or fat, your partitioning rate, and also your personal muscle mass. The ratio of muscle mass to body fat on your body is going to heavily determine what you do with those carbohydrates and how efficiently those carbohydrates are distributed into your body. The third thing we have to remember: Similar to the point on calorie partitioning that I just mentioned, the leaner you are, the better your insulin sensitivity may be. This may actually be advantageous to use carb cycling. Studies show when we lose body fat and when we build muscle, our insulin sensitivity will improve. When our insulin sensitivity improves, we're just going to use carbohydrates a little bit more effectively. Therefore, a higher carb approach may be better. So in the setting of a reverse diet or somebody who is lean, trying to build muscle but not accumulate fat, you may want to start off with carb cycling. You may have your calories down here and only bring your carbs up via calories here on your training day. So we're utilizing those because the leaner you are, the more effectively you may use those carbohydrates. Now, this is just as much theory as it is research, but it's a lot of anecdote as well. There's a lot of bodybuilders and a lot of very lean individuals over time who greatly use carb cycling to their advantage because they start from a lean place. So remember that insulin sensitivity is a factor in carb cycling. And if you want to improve your ability in the efficacy of carb cycling, you might want to improve your insulin sensitivity. The fourth thing we need to remember, which in my opinion is by far the most important thing, there is a psychological benefit to carb cycling for some individuals. There is also a physiological benefit for some individuals depending on how they set up that carb cycle. The first scenario, simply having a high day once a week or scattered throughout the week when I train hard might give me a psychological break from the norm. I don't feel like I'm dieting. I feel like I'm getting more food. I almost feel like I'm able to reward myself. I have more flexibility because I have more calories to play with. It simply gives me a break from the diet. So for some individuals, this is massive because it improves consistency and adherence, which we know are the most important things inside of dieting. So if you're somebody who enjoys having a high carb day after having these low carb days, these low calorie days where you know and feel like you're dieting, having these scattered high carb days that still meet your caloric weekly intake might be beneficial. Rather than having a bunch of moderate days throughout the week, let's dig a little deeper, have a low day, and then follow it by a nice relaxing day of higher carbs. The second situation, the physiological, meaning your hormones, your metabolism, so on and so forth. This may be benefited from people who have back-to-back high carb days. Something I talk about in my content of nutritional periodization quite a bit is the 5-2 method. Really simple. You have 5 days of a deficit, 2 days of refeeding, 2 days at maintenance. This allows our body to actually help leptin, ghrelin, metabolism, thyroid, testosterone, all these hormones that do take a hit during a diet or a deficit. We can bring our calories up to maintenance for 48 to 72 hours, so 2 to 3 days, and we actually can see an improvement in those, or at least have an insurance policy to make sure they don't get dampened or negatively impacted across the time during a diet. So with carb cycling, what you can do is actually couple your high carb days together so they are back to back. Whether you have 2 high carb days a week or 4, it's still carb cycling, and using this method of back-to-back refeeds may actually improve the physiology, which extends the period of time we can actually diet and get lean for. The fifth and final thing we need to remember, carbohydrates are a protein-sparing nutrient. What this means is if I have ultra high carbohydrates, I can lower my protein needs because I don't need quite as much protein. The reason you should be aware of this is if you are dieting and let's say you're consuming 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight, a high amount of protein on a deficit, you may want to lower that protein to about 0.8, 1 gram at most during those high carb days. It's going to keep your overall calories still in check, it's going to help digestion, and it's going to help facilitation and absorption of those carbohydrates. This is theory, but studies have shown that carbs are a nutrient-sparing nutrient. What this means is based on the research that shows carbohydrates are a protein-sparing nutrient, we may be able to keep our calories lower and actually undulate our macros, bringing up carbs, lowering protein on those high carb days. It makes digestion a little bit easier, it makes absorption of those carbs a little bit easier, and it may allow you to stay in your caloric deficit a little bit easier. Now we can more easily adhere to the carb cycling approach. At the end of the day, carb cycling is another tool. Keto is a tool. Intermittent fasting is a tool. All the different forms of nutritional periodization are all tools. You have to decide what you can adhere to, and that's the most important thing. So when we go over these strategies, using carbohydrates as fuel, using them as a body composition tool to enhance our aesthetic physique, you need to understand what you can actually apply into your lifestyle, apply into your weekly diet, and actually adhere to. Because if you can't stick to it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5+ months, it's not the right strategy for you. So going over all the research, carb cycling can work. In my experience, it works better for people who know that it will allow them to adhere to the caloric deficit better. I'm gonna repeat that. Adhere to the caloric deficit better. That's the most important thing. We need that weekly caloric balance in check. And if carb cycling allows you to adhere to that better, it's golden. It's the golden ticket. So you should do it. I also have seen in my experience that it works really well for people who are performing hard. Having high carb days with fast acting carbohydrates like highly branched cyclic dextrin or even food sources like white rice, pre and post workout, and having more of those around your training sessions if A, you are a performance athlete, or B, you are looking to build as much muscle as possible, can and does work well. We have a lot of research that's up and down because it's really hard to do research on these things. We also have a lot of anecdote and experience of myself and many clients that we've worked with and hundreds of coaches out there that have used these strategies on those clients. So once again, at the end of the day, you need to decide if carb cycling fits in your lifestyle. If not, it's just another tool that doesn't need to be necessarily used. Figure out your calories, figure out your macros. That's how you're gonna see success.